As we prepare to stand for a moment of silence, then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm bestowing, feels so important, the honor of helping us with tonight's pledge to a young lady whom Miss Williams absolutely adores. I think it's Yaya, right? Okay, and that would be Bella. And Bella will join me as soon as we conclude the moment of silence. So everyone, please rise for a moment of silence, and then we'll have Bella's version of the Pledge of Allegiance. Join me. Hello. I'm going to ask you to go first if you want to stand in front of me. Get out of the way so the camera gets you. Come right behind you. Oh, oh. Yeah. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bella.
See, I got roll call up, but it's a public display.
That was a good one. That was a real good one. Thank you, Bella. Autographs after tonight's meeting. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Problems getting that to come up. I have it on my laptop, but it's not coming up there. As soon as we get the screen up, we'll have a roll call. Okay. We are at roll call. You should be able to use your devices. On the phone, I believe we have Member Elsesser. Member Elsesser, are you on the phone? That'd be 15 present.
I'm on the phone. I didn't know, Paul Rosemom, didn't know if you got me or not.
We have you, Paul.
All right. That'd be 16 present. Next is approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Get a motion on the minutes, please. Thank you, Dr. Blair, and a second from Ms. Daly. Any additions or corrections? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Rosenbaum?
Aye.
16 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I think that, wouldn't that be 17 ayes?
16. We have Member Allison, Member Elsasser
Oh, okay, thank you.
are absent. Next we'd be at citizens' remarks.
Thank you. I think the clerk has one for this evening, but I'll go to the in-person request from Lynn Carmichael. Lynn, Ms. Carmichael, will provide a microphone for Mr. Sorrell.
Stand up there by, oh, stand up there. Mic is hot, so go ahead and talk and bring it back, mic back to me when you're done.
Or this mic right here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Lynn Carmichael. I'm part of Lenmark Farms, along with my siblings. We own the 80 acres. That's been part of our family farm for the last 70 years. We are just new to how government affects the farming world, and so we are just learning right now some information that we did not know. We would like to have some sort of protection for our drainage, as this 30 acres is divided into 3 separate plots. What we were looking for is just information as to what kind of protection was available. Also, you know, just the general gist of urban sprawl, and as Peoria County grows and takes more of farmland out of production, we were just wondering, you know, and I'm just learning too that you have already made a decision on this, but we're just here to say our part as far as, you know, we would like to continue farming. That's what our part of the land has been for, like I said, 70 years, and we hope to continue to do that. We just wondered how it would be affected by Ms. Martin's choice of dividing the land as she has chosen there. When we have looked at the maps of this, we see how, and any of you that are in the farming world know that farmers connect drainage tiles to land that they don't own. It's always been a good neighbor policy. So the people north of us hook onto our tile, we hook onto the people south of us, and then it goes on down the line like that. So that's generally what we were here to ask about and to get more information. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Next would be the one that we had as an email. It reads, Peoria County Board members, thank you for the opportunity to submit public comment on the PACE program, which will be up for discussion tonight. My name is Kirsten Sheets. I am the Solar PV Division Manager for Rural Mechanical Services, Inc., Peoria, Illinois. Rural Mechanical serves many commercial and industrial customers in the county for HVAC maintenance, service, design, and new installations for all types of electrical services for energy efficiency work in HVAC, lighting, and building controls, and of course, design and installation of solar PV arrays. The team at Rural Mechanical is excited to add to the Peoria County PACE program as a financing option for our clients. Under Illinois law, counties and municipalities may establish C-PACE programs and create related PACE areas in order to offer for-profit and nonprofit owners of commercial, industrial, and multifamily properties long-term fixed-rate financing or refinancing for up to 100% of the cost of their respective alternative energy efficiency, renewable energy, resiliency, and water use improvement projects, Illinois Finance Authority. PACE will assist and improve all of Peoria County, from residents to building owners to business owners. PACE will allow energy efficiency and resiliency projects to commercial buildings across the county, even in the agricultural sector. Commercial building owners will be able to look at alternative long-term financing for building improvements and add PACE funding to lower upfront capital investment made toward building improvements. These projects will increase the value of the commercial property, lower the energy consumption of the building and building users, increase the amount of available construction projects in the county, increase the amount of jobs with construction companies working in the PACE program, increase the amount of jobs involving the local supply chain for equipment, increase the jobs for local engineers designing these projects, as well as many others. PACE will allow for solar project up to 25-year long-term loan terms rather than the short-term financing available through a standard capital loan of 5 to 7 years. PACE financing will be added to the federal and state incentives, as well as the incentives from Ameren, Illinois, for a better financial forecast for solar projects. For HVAC projects, improving the energy efficiency to heat and cool the building, those projects would qualify for 15 years or more financing. Again, over the standard capital loan of 5 to 7 years. Combining energy efficiency improvements and solar PV installation would allow for larger projects being implemented on a quicker timeline with better efficiency for the use of the Peoria County PACE program. In other words, a larger capacity can be made on a commercial building and on a faster timeline than projects using traditional financing. Small businesses will be able to take advantage of PACE, as well as we can utilize the warehouse offered by the Illinois Finance Authority to group projects across the state into larger loan amounts and secure equal financing opportunities for small business owners as those for large commercial and industrial business owners. The same is true for nonprofit building owners who often can't afford the upfront capital cost of some energy efficiency projects. Again, utilizing the Ameren, Illinois Saves Energy Efficiency incentive program along with PACE long-term financing will be a great tool for businesses like Rule to be able to present to our clients. We look forward to utilizing this program in the near future. Thank you for your progressive action in bringing CPACE to Peoria County. Kirsten Sheets.
Thank you.
Next would be the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. A motion to approve the consent agenda. Ms. Williams and Ms. Duncan, thank you. Questions on this item?
I'm sorry, who was that second?
Duncan.
Duncan?
No questions from anyone? I'd like to pull C10, please. All right, anyone else? I've asked for C10. Seeing no one else. We would be voting on the consent agenda minus C10. Please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum?
Aye.
15 ayes, 1 nay.
Thank you. We would be at C10. Mr. Dillon, and a second. Mr. Salzer, thank you. Before I ask, does anybody else want to ask any questions about this item? Mr. Sorrell, this has gone through County Public Works.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So, based on some questions neighboring properties have, how is it that we determined this is our responsibility?
So this is the hillside from the backside of the Headington Oaks property down to the public right-of-way that is Farmington Road is all of our property. We own that down to the right-of-way line at the bottom of the hill. It's roughly an 80-foot change in elevation over roughly 220 feet of linear footage. The outfall of our stormwater detention basin has caused erosion to the point that during significant rain events, the stormwater ditch of Farmington Road will occasionally fill in with siltation requiring IDOT, because Farmington Road is a state-controlled road, requiring IDOT to clean out that stormwater ditch for the effective flow of stormwater along Farmington Road. What we're doing here is designing a potential solution or a necessary solution to stop or at least significantly slow down the erosion of the hillside.
So is our engineer here? Hi, Amy.
Yes.
Could you help Scott out? I had a couple of questions because my assumption, and you've confirmed it, is that the culvert, if I can call it that, is the state's responsibility. Welcome, Ms. McLaren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The culvert that outflows from the detention basin is on the Headington Oaks property, and that's the origin point of the water discharge that goes down the hillside that leads to Farmington Road.
Well, I would argue that there's a lot of water that flows down that hill that's not part of the Headington Oaks part. So when I say culvert, I'm talking about, and I see this mess, I drive by it every day. The ditch it's going into off Farmington Road is the IDOT responsibility.
That is correct.
So is it not their job, once the water we've controlled in some way that's flowing, whether naturally off the hillside and as corrected by, let's just say, uphill property owners like us, is it not the state's responsibility to maintain whatever's happening down there at the bottom?
State maintains the drainage in the ditch on Farmington Road. I believe the concern had to do with sediment that came off the hillside in the vicinity of the exit for the culvert from the detention basin.
So, Ms. McLaren, based on the photos that are in the resolution tonight, you don't show any kind of what I would think of as a retention pond to catch the flow off that storm connection at all. There's no culvert that was designed into our property to catch control and let slowly go into the ground, as opposed to letting it spill violently down the hill. None of that's designed on our property.
It appears that when it was originally designed, there was reinforcing with large rock on the outfall of the pipe, and through flood events, it was too much force, and it pushed that rock out of the way. It couldn't hold the capacity of the outflow of the detention basin.
So just a couple more questions. So would you think that's a maintenance problem or a design problem on our part?
It looks like it could have been over time. It could have been something, a flow that wasn't designed for, a larger flow. We design for standardized flows, and sometimes we get more than what we designed for. And so it could be a combination of both.
All right, so my last question is, given that nobody in this room knows where the price tag of this fix is going, and you're requesting an engineering study to help assess that, where does that delineation between what's the county's cost of business and the state's cost of business begin and end?
That's a good question. I would say that on public right-of-way, the state would own the ditch and anything up to the right-of-way line, which on Farmington Road, it would be not too much farther. I don't know exactly where the right-of-way is, but it'd be the ditch, and past that a little bit would be the state's responsibility.
So where that break is, where they've filled in with rock, is sort of a berm that appeared to be designed once to keep the water above it and not let it go below. Is that the way you visualize that?
Actually, I think the right-of-way is farther down the hill and closer to Farmington Road.
Farther down the hill. Okay. Mr. Sorrell, fellow members, I ask these questions because we're picking at a scab here trying to figure out how much it costs to fix something. And when I think of our responsibility in erosion, and especially, let's just say, ditches and culverts all across the county, our ditches are catching water that runs off from farm fields and farm fields and farm fields, and I don't remember anybody having to fix it on a county road except us. So the landowners and the design of those properties or businesses have some responsibility to capture and control the flow and release it in an orderly manner. I lived next to Dick Whitney for a lot of years, so forgive me. So does this mean that we're going to pay for the repairs? Have we consulted with IDOT? Those are the last questions.
At this time, we've not determined a source of revenue, whether it be our own or someone else's, to affect any repairs to the hillside that may be necessary. We wanted to get an order of magnitude and an estimate of what that might look like, and then we can figure out who's going to be responsible for it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sorrell. Any other comments on this? Miss Kate.
There was a similar situation on Galena Road where the hillside going up to Grandview Drive area was washing into the road, and they have just done a major repair project for that. I would think that it would be a similar situation to that. Maybe our situation is a smaller scale. I haven't been to see that hillside, but I don't know who paid for that major erosion control that was done on that hillside. I'm assuming that hillside is owned by the Park District, so it might be worth looking into that. And so I guess if we need to look into this further before we decide to own this project, maybe we should send this back to committee.
Mr. Dillon. Thank you, Kate.
Part of the thought process of doing this is a full disclosure. I mean, obviously it's no secret. Headington Oaks is going to be sold or something's going to happen to it. Being one of the more senior members on here, in full disclosure, when we originally built that, and Scott can testify to it, that was one of the things that we cut corners on and did a different design. The original design was a lot more to collect that rainwater before CSO and everything, even it was talked about, but not to the extent that it is now. So we do have a retention basin back there that catches part of it to slow the process down. But as everybody knows, some of these massive rains that we've had that we've never seen before, most of this is for all that dirt that comes down, and Andrew sees it every day too. I drive by it. Some of these massive rain events, you have mud that has gone completely across Farmington Road, and IDOT has come multiple times, cleaned that ditch out. Did we put that rock there, or did IDOT put that rock there? On that hillside right above the culvert to try to stop it.
It was not us, so it had to have been IDOT.
So IDOT put it down there. The clear source of this mud, which there's multiple businesses up there, and not businesses, but residents, there's a cemetery. But the clear source of where this is coming from is our entire Surface Street parking lot up there drains back into that retention. And I'm not so sure our roofs did not drain back into that too. So we're putting all that surface water back into that retention pond. And that hillside is a great slope. So it is just rocketing down there. And it moved that rock that we had like nothing. Being a plumber, water is the most destructive thing you'll ever witness when it is moving. So it's more about full disclosure, we have serious issues going on there to get a cost estimate of what are we looking at. Is it whether it be $200,000 or $1 million, to at least know what the problem is, and it has to be redesigned because there's no way. We're lucky at some point somebody hasn't sued us for going across the road with the mud that pours down there during massive rain events. But I understand all your questions.
Thank you. All right, appreciate it, Amy. Thank you, Scott. We would be at C10. There's a first and a second.
So can I make a motion to send this back to committee?
Sure. I think we would require a substitute motion. Or you could move to amend the motion.
Whatever is the simplest.
Move to amend.
Okay.
Is there a second? Oh, I got Miss Bryant. Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a motion.
Okay.
So we have a motion to amend the original motion.
Mm-hmm. The amended motion is up on the screen now for vote.
And it's Kate on the first and Miss Bryant on the second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Kate.
Miss Pastucia on the first.
Have to withdraw it. Okay, so let me go back. Okay, now we're ready.
Okay, so we would be voting on the motion to amend, which will then bring us back to a discussion if it is successful. So please vote.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'm unclear. Sorry, I'm not following. I expect the amendment would have some description of what the amendment is before I vote. So maybe I don't understand the process.
It's to refer it back to committee. So we're asking that this motion be amended to say. That's why I was thinking substitute. So that it's fair because we're not amending the language. So anybody want to try to redo this with me? All right,
Chairman, just let me ask, what would be the purpose of sending this back to committee to discuss? It's a pretty clear-cut engineering project that needs to be done regardless for a fairly low amount.
We can answer that question. The member can answer that question once we get a substitute motion to refer back to committee on the floor. So that's a fair question then. So what I need to do is ask if the maker and the second will withdraw their motion to defer as an amendment to the original motion and then replace it with a substitute motion that simply says refer the item back to committee.
So I'm making a substitute motion.
Yes, but I
refer back
need you
to
to
committee.
remove your request to amend the original one.
Yeah, because I don't really want to amend it. I just want to kick it back.
Okay, and the second was Ms. Bryant. Are you okay with that? All right, so now what we're going to do is you're going to make a substitute motion to send this back to committee for further review. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, so Ms. Bryant is the second. Mr. Dillon.
I'm still questioning why we would send this back. What its purpose is going to be solved? It needs to be done. This is a reasonable amount of money. The issue doesn't go away whether we go back. I would say we need to, there's still questions that can be answered in the meantime, whether or not IDOT needs to do anything, if there's other things. This is just approving it to enter into an agreement. There's still some things that can be, they still have to execute the contract. The chairman still has to sign the contract. So even us approving this tonight, there still can, if there's questions about IDOT right away and other things, those can be solved in the meantime. this does not solve any, this is gonna have to happen no matter what, especially from safety issues, and you're not gonna get another engineering firm or a better price in the deal. So I'm just curious, what good does it do to kick the can back of the month to reiterate the comments that we've already had in committee discussing this?
I just think we need to look and see, like, the situation that on Galena Road, if it was the Park District and the state, who paid for that engineering? Was it the state or the Park District? I would like to know that before I vote to pay for engineering if we don't have to do that.
It was the Park District, I do believe, was the funder
So
of that.
I guess I would like some time to find out about that before I vote on this, because I don't have an answer to that at this moment.
All right, so we're still discussing the substitute motion. Any other questions, Mr. Ricker?
Yeah, I guess my only question maybe is, have we collaborated with the IDOT? You know, I don't want this to go to the point we as a county hired an engineering firm, designed it, and then IDOT come back and said, well, you didn't engage us, we don't agree with your design, why didn't you have us on the project from day one? So together, because I assume we're gonna touch their property line at some point or interact with them, so I would prefer to have IDOT, and maybe Mr. Dillon can explain, they can do that after this is approved, but I want to go on record that we want IDOT at the table in the discussions before we spend money to design what we think is a fix, and they may disagree with us. That would be my only concern.
Good point. Thank you. Others? Mr. Dillon.
So part of the process, and Amy, where's Amy at? I mean, I believe in part of the study that we're engaging in, there's erosion control process and erosion control engineering. And I don't mean this in disrespect to anybody on this board, but we're really overthinking a simple problem here. Water is collecting, it's not doing its job, it's running down this hill, and it's a small amount of money to figure out what the problem and what the solution is. The actual big portion of the problem is the actual cost to do the construction project. So the $25,000 in engineering fees is the smallest part of this project, potentially, of six-figure projects to figure out what the problem is. So typically in these things, IDOT will engage in some stuff, but this is not IDOT's problem. This is our problem of not controlling the water on the top of the hill. It's at unsafe speeds coming down that hill, eroding that hill, spilling out onto an IDOT highway, which when we had discussions about this prior to this, we were actually somewhat surprised that IDOT hadn't already called and said, what are you doing, and you need to fix this, because if anybody goes down there, that drainage ditch was just cleaned out that not long ago, and it is about level with the road again, full of dirt.
Brian Elsesser.
Joined.
I understand your concerns, Kate, but on the $25,000 engineering fee project, this is not IDOT's responsibility. We're the owner of the property. We're creating that problem. That fully rests with us. IDOT controls that small little piece of culvert down there, not the hillside that's creating all this problem. So, and I do believe, maybe Scott, I don't know if Scott knows, but most of that stuff from the Park District, because those are privately owned roads on Grandview, I believe, partly, from the Park District. So that water that they're collecting is the Park District's responsibility to safely discharge. But the amount of studies that come in now through the EPA and erosion control and all this other stuff, I mean, I've known people that wanted to build parking lots in the past, but if there's water that comes down through that parking lot off a hillside, they're not allowed to change the direction of the natural flow of water. So I would ask, as the members that district that this in, this is a minimal cost to at least figure out what the problem is for the possible new owners and ourselves going forward for full disclosure.
Ms. Pastisha? Thank you, Mr. Dillon.
I may choose to vote for this at a later date. I just need more information, and I guess I don't feel like this is a super urgent matter, and I don't see the need to vote on this tonight when we could get more information and vote on it next time. So.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad I raised the question. Maybe. So, Ms. McLaren, have you had any contact with IDOT?
I have not talked to him about this project, but I'm happy to do so. Happy to talk to their maintenance and engineering folks if that would help with the conversation.
Okay, thank you. So how is it that we just decided to study what the cost to fix it would be, Mr. Sorrell?
We have an erosion problem on our property that needs to be resolved. It's our responsibility. And as good property owners, that's what we should be doing.
Under the theory of picking the scab is where I'm seeing it, because it's a whole question about what happens when we slow the water down and still dump it in the ditch, okay? Because that's where it's going. And all the natural fingers of that ravine that have occurred over time, prior property owners, our ownership of a particular property, I just wonder I get this sense there's a Pandora's box there, which is why I brought it up. So the rationale for the substitute motion, anybody else have any? Jimmy?
No, I mean, I understand that some people need more information. As the district that this represents, I would urge a no vote on it to get this process started, because, and Kate, I do respect you. You can vote no on it if you don't feel like you have enough information, but this isn't a problem. This has been something that we've been talked about in the past. We had a whole committee to discuss. I just don't see the issues on a $25,000 engineering fee for a problem of this magnitude.
All right. Anyone else? So, thank you, Andrew. We would be at the substitute motion to refer this back to committee, and I think your expectation is to get more information about coordinating with IDOT and who ultimately could be accountable for the fix, us, them, both of us. In the meantime, since there's a safety question involved when the road silts over, we really need to get to this expeditiously. So I would just add that to your bucket of thoughts, okay? Substitute motion, please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum? Mr. Rosenbaum, how do you vote?
Nay.
Mr. Elsesser?
I won't vote on this one because I'm not even sure which resolution you're on because I just joined the meeting.
Okay. That would be 7 ayes, 9 nays. Motion failed.
Thank you. Then we'd be back at the motion to approve the engineering study. Any other discussion on that? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum?
Aye.
Mr. Elsesser?
Like I said, I won't be voting
sorry.
on this because I'm not
Okay,
sure
I'm
which
sorry.
resolution you're on.
I'll put abstain. Mr. Rand? 13 ayes, 3 nays. 1 abstention.
Thank you. Mr. Dillon, is that in your committee or Mr. Salzer's committee? Okay, thank you.
Next will be at zoning ordinance and resolutions. Item number 1, case number 013-21-U, petition of
Ryan Elsesser.
Left.
Petition of Becky L. Murphy, a special use as required in section 20-9.1.5.1 of the Unified Development Ordinance. This section allows for special use in order to deem a non-conforming use or structure to be in the conformity and to be allowed to continue and expand as a lawfully existing use or structure. The petitioner proposes to expand an existing non-conforming use in the I-1 Light Industrial District. The parcel is located in Medina Township. The Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval. The Land Use Committee concurs.
Could I get a motion? Put this on the floor. Mr. Dillon and Ms. Williams as the second. Discussion. Mr. Chairman? None? Anyone?
Unless there's questions.
Questions on the resolution? Bella, do you have any? Great. All right, please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Alcester left the meeting, and for some reason it automatically gave him an aye. Oh. I was going to say, what's going on here? Okay, I feel better now. I was getting worried. That'd be 17 ayes.
Wow.
Make some noise next time. That was very strange. Okay, we're at item number 2. Case number 014-21-U, petition of Linda Martin, a special use as required in section 20.5.2.2.1.A.1 of the Unified Development Ordinance. This section allows for a special use when a proposed land split does not meet the 25-acre minimum lot size, nor the 1 dwelling unit per 25 contiguous acres density requirement in the A2 agricultural district. The petitioner proposes to divide 3 10-acre parcels from an existing 30.45-acre tract. The parcel is located in Medina Township. The Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval with restrictions. The Land Use Committee concurs.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Dillon on the motion to approve and Dr. Blair on the second. Discussion. Mr. Ricker.
Can I just ask for maybe a quick summary of this and around what's the land being split into 3 10-acre parcels, kind of what's the objective, just so we have a better understanding. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome, Kathy. Nice to see you.
The petitioner is proposing to divide the 30-acre parcel into 3 10-acre parcels in order to sell them for residential developments. They recently purchased this property. This parcel is located 0.3 miles from the city of Peoria. It's within their 1.5 mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. They have stated that they would be willing to sign the plat with a pre-annexation agreement. Our land use plan does designate this area as urban, which does allow for residential development, especially large lot residential development. So it's consistent with the land use plan. It does have public water. It had a low LISA score for agricultural protection, and it's consistent with the subdivisions in the area. City of Peoria, as I said, is 0.3 miles to the southeast. There are other subdivisions about 0.4 miles to the northwest, multiple subdivisions within a mile of this area.
Can I ask, would this be eventually annexed into the city with this, and do they have to have continuity? Because you mentioned it's 0.7 miles, or there's a distance between this property and the city boundaries, so just help us understand how that would work and the adjoining property requirement.
During the platting process, the city has the ability to require a pre-annexation agreement, so it wouldn't be annexed at this time. But in that agreement, they specify certain things that they would like to see happen when the property is eligible to be annexed.
Others, questions? Mr. Elsesser.
Kathy, could you just refresh my memory as to who the objections were? Or, I'm not sure if you're allowed to say that, but as to, trying to think of the right word, as to why they objected?
Yes, we had one objection from Linmart Farm LLC. The speaker earlier was representative of Linmark Farms. In her letter, she mentioned drainage tile function interruption, the fear that farm livestock may cause a nuisance complaints, and that ag chemical applications may be a concern to whoever the new owners would be.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is the latest I've ever come to a meeting, and so I missed that. Was that under citizens' remarks then?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Kathy, we are referring to case 013-21-U, is that right?
014-21-U.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum,
Aye.
16 ayes, 1 nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next is item number 3, an ordinance from your Ways and Means Committee establishing a property assessed clean energy program known as PACE.
Thank you. Would you like to put that? Thank you, Mr. Fennell. A second. Thank you, Dr. Blair. Sorry, Kate. Got you last second. Mr. Sorrell, would you please inform us?
Happy to, Mr. Chairman. So CPACE is as we heard from one of the citizen remarks this evening, is a program available to county governments that is then provided to commercial and industrial developments existing and proposed in our county. Last year, I believe you awarded a contract to a vendor that would be the administrator of our program. The first scope of work item under that contract was to bring forward the ordinance that you're voting on this item that establishes our process and establishes the parameters of that process. As we heard from the citizen remarks, this has the opportunity for business owners to make energy efficient or clean energy related improvements to their own properties through a financing mechanism that has it being paid back through the property taxes. We've worked very hard with the county treasurer on this program. She's had a significant amount of input in the program, and at this point in time, I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Members? Mr. Fennell.
If memory serves, the city of Peoria is also engaged in this. Is that right?
That is correct. They've seen interest from property owners looking to take advantage of this program.
Anyone else? Mr. Ricker? Mr. Elson?
I looked at this last night, but it was kind of late. How much is this costing us out of our pocket, or what are the fees that we are associated with it?
Great question, Mr. Elsesser. There are fees that we are allowed to collect under the law that offset our costs. Let me see if I can find those in the ordinance, which is a pretty lengthy document, so I can quote them directly to you as opposed to just...
page 220, or is that...
That sounds pretty close. Let me get to that page in the packet. So there are a number of program fees There is an application fee that is $150. There are closing fees that are a percentage of the amount being financed with a cap. The program fee is 1.75% of the project with a cap of $75,000. Our fee that goes for to offset any costs in Nicole's office is 1% of the financing amount. And then there's an annual maintenance fee. The treasurer will get on an annual basis $200, and the program administration fee is roughly $100 for every financing less than $500,000. So if the project is less than $500,000, there's program administration maintenance fees of $100. Those are called out in the statute. The businesses that are looking to provide some of the service or are looking to take advantage of it are well aware of what those fees are, and those that have provided interest in the program and are well aware of what those fees are have zero problem with where those fees have been set.
That was a good question,
Thank you.
Mr. Elsesser.
Very thorough.
Others? I had some questions about this last time, Mr. Sorrell.
Yes.
They were answered quickly, competently, and in English that I could read. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Seeing no other questions, please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum,
Aye.
16 ayes, 1 nay. Motion passes. Item number 4, a resolution from your Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee recommending approval of the appropriation in the amount of $2,197,150 from the IT Services Fund to the Enterprise Requirements Planning Capital Fund.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to approve? Thank you, Mr. Fennel. And a second would be Ms. Duncan. Thank you, Ms. Duncan. This is a big number, merits some conversation. Mr. Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this item is the funding mechanism for item 5 and item 6 that is next on your agenda. As outlined in the memo from staff to the board that was generated and distributed last week, for everyone's benefit, we're talking about an ERP system, which ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and essentially for our purposes of discussion, we are replacing Penimation, which is our finance and HR software, and Timeforce, which is our time and attendance software. Penimation is an end-of-life replacement. The vendor that provides that software will no longer be providing any updates or security patches. They've given us ample notice. That's why we started down this project. It was something that we had anticipated, so we had been planning for it. What we did in terms of trying to look at what the project was going to entail, we knew early on that no one on our team had ever implemented a software system like this before. So last year you awarded a competitive procurement to Barry Dunn of Portland, Maine to do project management consulting for us. Key items that they accomplished in their scope of work to get us to today is we process mapped in its current state every single process, and there's over 30 of them, that Penimation or Time Force somehow touches. We also took those same 30 processes and then mapped them from a desired future state perspective, and where we could eliminate steps and created efficiencies. With that information in mind, we started creating a list of all the requirements that the new software would need to deliver to us, and that list ended up being over 3,000 individual items or requirements. That was the backbone of the RFP document that we put out on the street for software vendors to respond to. As we could talk about in the next item, we had several responses. We went through a process of ranking those, doing vendor demonstrations, and coming up with a recommended vendor. And that would be the next item on the agenda tonight. The goal that we looked at throughout the process, and we'll continue to look at during the implementation phase, is opportunities for change management. Our goal is obviously to maximize the flexibility of the software to drive change management and process improvement. That will result in fewer customizations, which means the software will be at a more economical price because it ramps up whenever you have to include customizations. There will be some, though, because they do have to integrate or talk to some of the other software programs that we do use throughout the organization. As it relates to funding, so that's a little bit of the backup for the entire concept and the entire project. Specific now to this item, project cost, something that we have been planning for the last several years. Unlike the Integrated Civil Criminal Justice Information System, we will not have to issue any debt. We'll be able to pay cash for the system implementation. And then future costs will be applied proportionally across all the user departments or funds, because it's really calculated at the fund level, as we talked about in the memo, using our existing IT user fee. The IT user fee is calculated using a rationale found in our cost allocation plan. Cost allocation plan is updated once every 3 to 5 years. It's something that we're actually required to do for many of our federal grant compliances. That cost allocation plan, in terms of how we use or calculate the IT user fee, first we look at the pieces of individual hardware that a fund or a department might have, specifically desktop or laptop PCs, and then any tablet PCs, which would be an iPad or a Microsoft Surface Pro. For each one of those devices, there's a cost associated with it. That is the replacement cost, or the cost of purchasing, and then maintain any security patches and updates. We take that total, whatever the sum is of those desktop hardware costs, and we subtract it from the total IT cost. And then we take whatever is remaining and we divide that by the number of users that we have in each of the funds or departments. And that's how we arrive at the IT user fee each year. And again, that in terms of what the total cost is. And then during the budget process, the finance team and I look at what the 100% cost is versus what the organization's ability to pay is. And sometimes we, at the fund level, we make an adjustment, or sometimes we do not. So in the current fiscal year, on average, across all funds, we're funding IT services at roughly, I think it's 85 or 86% of what that original 100% cost calculation was. As I said, we don't do that at the fund level. So just as an example, all the general fund departments are rolled up into general county. So individual departments in the general fund do not actually see that IT user fee in their individual budgets. We put it in the general county budget. The general county budget this year is just a shade under $3 million out of a total of $4,479,000. The lion's share, obviously, because of a high number of users, would be the sheriff's office. And then, the next largest user outside the general fund would be the health department. Specific to the project funding, the cost proposal received by the recommended vendor, which is Tyler Technologies, for their product called Munis, the cost per year for the software in years 1 through 5 is $349,405. That is an increase over our current cost of $223,405 per year. Starting only in year 6, out through year 10, but in year 6, there is a one-time 5% increase in the annual cost. So years 6 through 10 will be $366,876. That is $234,576 greater than our current costs, and $17,471 greater than the year 1 through year 5 cost on an annualized basis. The total 10-year cost estimated, which includes the implementation, it includes software support, it includes hosting fees and consulting, is estimated at $5,079,745. One of the reasons why it's this amount and versus what could have been a much higher amount is a function of how the software was procured. We asked for the respondents to propose either software as a service, so think of it as it being in the cloud, versus having that software physically installed and hosted on our own servers in the IT room. All the prospective vendors responded with only a software as a service model, thereby eliminating the opportunity to evaluate it for having it locally housed in our own server room here on the ground floor of the courthouse. Had that been a direction that the vendors would have proposed, we would have anticipated, a minimum of $500,000 in server hardware cost, like we experienced, but at a much greater level when we did the Integrated Criminal Justice Information System. So the item before you tonight that you're voting on right now does 3 things. It creates a capital project fund, which is going to be Fund 170 or 170. It transfers that $2,197,150 from the reserves of the IT Services Fund to that newly created capital project fund. And third, it then appropriates the spending authority for that $2,197,150 into 7 categories. But as shown in the resolution, only a handful of accounts. So looking at what those accounts are, you can see them in the resolution. And there are 4 of them in numerical order by account number. There's $100,000 budgeted for contingencies. There's $528,880 budgeted for consultant services. There's $698,810 budgeted for software maintenance and leasing, and $869,460 for software itself. The last one being a capital line, the other 3 being contractual lines. And that's how we arrive at $2,197,150. Happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you. Scott, the last breakout of capital versus...
So the 869,460 that you see is the last line in the resolution on page 332 of your packet. That is a capital line. You'll see it's 55300. That's a capital line. The other 3 lines are operational lines and they fit into the contractual bucket in our accounting chart of accounts.
Thank you. Members, comments? Beginning with Ms. Pastusha.
I just wanted to ask, how long have you guys been saving for this?
Roughly 5 years. We're still in the audit phase, so the unaudited IT fund reserves as of 12/31/2020 is just a shade over $6 million.
I just want to say thank you to whoever had the foresight to start saving for this project way back then, because I like to be able to finance things this way.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Ricker.
Thank you for the detailed breakdown of the cost and kind of over the next 10 years. One thing I didn't hear, is there a potential cost savings because today we're running the software on servers that would have to be maintained, updated, upgraded, hardware cost that we would have had to put in a budget that now with, software as a service, we should be able to reduce some of that. So is there some benefits here that we may be able to take advantage of?
There's other costs also that fall into that. We will no longer have to maintain databases. I don't have to have a database administrator to do those, so that's part of those SaaS fees. From a security standpoint, the vendor will be responsible for managing the security piece, for disaster recovery piece, backup. Those are all things that we won't have to do, and those are costs that, yes, we would add. I mean, this is a large enough system, and I would say more complex than our current system, that there could have been a potential that we could have had to come back and ask for another resource to add to that. The other thing it gives us is from a disaster recovery standpoint. One thing we don't have at the courthouse is we don't have a generator. So we can provide about an hour of service until our battery backups go down. The more applications that we focus on the SaaS and the cloud, for instance, this application will be able to be ran outside of here. If Scott wants to look up stuff from home, he can run it from home. It's all completely web-based. So there's great advantages from that standpoint that we don't have to manage it. We actually talked to one of the larger counties in Ohio who had originally put this type of system on site and found that the administration of it was too great and they were spending way too much time, and they went from an on-site to a SaaS, which makes it even more difficult because when you're in that SaaS environment as being proposed is we don't actually own those licenses. We're paying to use that. And once you're on site and own those, to go to that direction, it's a little more difficult for that. So hopefully I answered your question.
I think so. I mean, I just, as we're looking at expenses, first off, the message is that the pentimation is going non-current in June of 2022. So we have an issue there, but just trying to look at other benefits that we get out of it. I'm a proponent of software as a service. I think that's directionally where we need to be. So elimination of us buying hardware and having servers and managing all of that in the future is a huge benefit. I just want to make sure that we account for that benefit. Otherwise, no other questions. Thank you.
Ms. Daly?
I just want to check and be sure that with this system, we would be able to send letters to our employees detailing their salaries, benefits, etc.
We will include the requirements of that report when we go into contract negotiations. So that is on our list of things that we will get as part of that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. Mr. Elsasser.
Well, as most of you know, I don't like spending this much money, but we can't change the past. But I do have a question. How did we end up with someone that all of a sudden after we've been paying them over these years, and I'm assuming we have some kind of a contract with them, how did we end up with someone saying, oh, by the way, we're not going to be able to serve you anymore because usually when someone is in business, you know, if you're if you're selling tires and you're going out of business, you would say, okay, I'm not going to serve you anymore, but I'm going to highly recommend, you know, one of my former competitors, and you know they can step in and they can do everything that I did. So how did this happen?
That's a great question, Mr. Elsesser, and actually it falls back to Microsoft. The platform in which the Penimation system is built upon is an architecture called Silverlight. It's a web-based programming language. Microsoft is dropping support and no longer will support that effective later this year. So any applications that are built upon that, you don't have support for. So we have kept Penimation upgraded. We have put the upgrades in, but unfortunately the architecture it's built on will no longer be supported by Microsoft. So Penimation has come to the point they can't support it. So effective the end of June in 2022, they're done supporting it. You're on your own. And so we can't upgrade Penimation without starting over again. There's no upgrade path to take it to. They don't have another version where we can come in and just say, hey, we'll migrate it because it's based on the architecture. So we have to start over again. So we took this opportunity to start over when we started this project back in February of last year in our first meeting. So, yep.
Are there other municipalities and counties in central Illinois or Illinois in general that are in the same boat that we're in?
There are several across the country. I know that in talking with the folks at Tyler, they've done several hundred conversions of Penimation, not just us. From a standpoint of Tyler, there's over 60 municipalities in the state that run the software we're looking at. The oldest being Winnebago County, who's ran that software for 20 years. And one of the newest is the city of Peoria. They just went live on the same thing about a year and a half ago. So yeah, and there's more all the time. I get notified all the time. So there's 60 plus.
Thank you.
Others? I have a few questions. And Mark, when did we know that Penimation was not going to be able to deliver service?
I believe in the other resolution, we were notified in May of last year. April or May is when we got the official letter. We had actually already, Scott had already formed the executive committee in February, was our first meeting. So we kind of figured it was coming, but we got a letter officially from them. It was late April, early May last year.
Okay, does it strike you as odd that Penimation would just cease business operations?
They're not ceasing business. They will still be in business. They're ceasing to support the version of the software we are running because Microsoft has made the decision not to support Silverlight any longer.
I only buy part of that. That's why I asked the question. So what you're paying $126,000 a year for is for Penimation to have a product that will keep running. And it's Penimation's job to make the investment in whatever future operating system they choose. So they clearly have chosen not to invest all these maintenance dollars we pay them, because those dollars aren't just for us to call and say something's busted. It's to keep the product current.
I agree.
So try to explain for me. I mean, basically, most of this stuff in old models where you're purchasing the system has a 20% recurring cost related to your original investment, and that's sold to you as telephone service, 24-hour service, service only on the weekends, and we're going to keep our product current. To keep a product current, an application product, they got to know which way the operating system world is going. So Microsoft hasn't dropped the ball on us. Penimation has dropped the ball on us. They're not creating the next version that runs on some other operating system. That's a choice they made not to do, but they've been collecting the maintenance and modernization fees from us each and every year.
I believe Penimation still is in business and still has a product, but it's a product that's based on a different architecture, and they are really focused on, I would say, a different customer. They had the opportunity to bid on this. I mean, we went public for bid, and they did not. I know looking where Penimation is today, there's still a lot of installs of Penimation, some of them in school districts, but it's not on the architecture that which we're on. And for us to move to the supported architecture means we got to start from scratch. So that's the reason this project was kicked off.
All right, I tried to make my point. You wouldn't accept the responsibility for our vendor not actually being successful at the obligation a maintenance agreement is paying for. Mr. Elsasser, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to be voting against this, and I'm even more troubled after the remarks that you made in your questions. So there is no one out there that can step in and continue the process. Is that 100% accurate? There's no one out there at all?
With the existing software, no. They don't own. There's nobody else that owns it. That's owned by Penimation.
Brian, everybody in this room works somewhere where we're paying our tax to Microsoft. But when you have a vendor, an intermediary like this that is using a licensed operating system, the licensor, Microsoft, always keeps the vendors up to date on what they're going to phase out, get ready. Here's a couple of new systems for you to choose from. And that's really the basis of my somewhat aggravated point there, is it's a foreseeable event for Penimation, and to me, they don't keep up their end of the bargain by telling us that, you know, we're persona non customer anymore because they're not going to convert to whatever Microsoft is leading the market with. My other set of questions, though, how do you pay this $2.197 million, Scott? Line 3 on page 318 in print says 2 years of hosting and support. That's basically the annual maintenance and hosting fee that I'm talking about. Are we paying that in advance? Is that in the 2.197, or is this really a 12-year agreement?
No, it's in year 2 of that cost, because early on in the implementation, we fully anticipate and expect, because it's the practice that Tyler, assuming you approve the next item, will install the software and we'll get access to it. And the moment they do that, the meter starts running for that item.
So you're saying the meter's running even before the punch list is complete?
Yes.
Is that usual?
Yes.
So we're going to pay the software maintenance and hosting fee before we're fully utilizing the system as approved by all the people in the organization that say, yeah, it works the way it's supposed to.
Yes.
And we're going to pay that down on the upfront side, 24 months of it.
That's what's built into the current appropriation, yes.
Is that a negotiable item?
Is it?
I would say up to this point, from the systems that we were put in that were hosted or SaaS-based, if you looked at the system that we put in for Headington Oaks, the electronic medical record, that was a cost which we started paying immediately when that project kicked off. Intergov, the planning and zoning system, which just went live 3 weeks ago, we've been paying that fee. That project's been going on for 2.5 years. We've been paying that. The reason that is they have to pay the licensing, hardware, and fees. So as soon as they spin up those servers, there's resources, there's hardware resources, there's software fees, there's all those. So, and the storage that's allocated. And I would say that's traditional in the way it works when you go into a SaaS environment like that. I have not seen, in my experience with those environments, your ability to not pay those fees immediately. I have seen situations where we've had delays, such as we had delays with Intergov last year due to several reasons, including COVID and resources, where those fees got pushed out because the project wasn't active because of issues beyond our control. but in every other project I've been with, as soon as you spin those, as soon as your environment is spinned up, that's going to be assigned to Peoria County. That's when that starts. And we actually had this discussion with our consultants the other day about that. So.
How much, Scott, will we be advancing out of this 2.197 before it's actually signed off on having met our specs?
Maybe a better demarcation in time is when the software goes live. It might be a better way to articulate that, Mr. Chairman. And if the project goes as planned and scheduled, we would be expecting to pay most everything here except the second year of support. The second year of support would be starting roughly the time we would be in the go live date. That would be, and then anything less contingencies that we would not, have to tap into. The majority of the expense, though, that's in that 2.19 million, we would expect to expend between now and June of next year.
So we would basically then have a contract for 9 years of support. Because what I inferred from that was June was the implementation is done.
Right. June of 22 is when we would expect to actually go live and move it from test or training and actually start using it live and turn Penimation off.
Okay, so I have a two-part question then. Did we use consultants to help us run this
Absolutely.
search? Okay.
Absolutely. And then item 6 modifies their existing contract to continue with consulting services during the implementation process.
And did we put in the spec that we were willing to prepay for hosting and software leasing even before it began working?
I don't know if we specifically put that specification in the RFP. It wasn't a technical. Obviously it's not a technical requirement of how the software performs and works. I think this is more of a function of this is the industry standard in how when you install or implement a software as a service, you incur those costs early on in the project before the go live.
I'm not going to debate you on what industry standards are. I think what they are what you negotiate. That advance fee is roughly 1/3 of this total project cost here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's 700 of 2.1, and it just doesn't seem to me like that's in our favor. That seems to me something that we are just allowing the vendor to run us over on. It may be their standard fare, their standard approach, but I think you get what you negotiate. I don't want to sit here and tell everybody in the room that I've been through this process before, but fill in the blank. And this kind of prepaying for service, even before we sign off and give them the last check, troubles me because I don't think that's the way you should be selling services to the government. Our taxpayers are agreeing to prepay software maintenance and hosting costs even before the system's alive. And it may sound like a standard industry practice, but I don't think that's the way everyday people look at it. So I weighed in on my comment there. I'm not going to lobby the board to go in any different direction. But that kind of consultant isn't necessarily working as hard to protect our dollars and expend them more methodically than I think they're capable of. So I appreciate the answers, Mark. Negotiations aren't something everybody's familiar with, but I'm troubled by spending money with the Penimation folks and them never continuing to develop their product for the future, and that just flying by us. And secondly, that we would prepay how to keep the system running, how to store the stuff virtually, and before the software is configured to work and is approved on some kind of punch list, before it's done, we're already paying all those fees. I think there's two initials for it. First one is a B. So that's my last point. Any other members have any? Brian, I don't mean to fire you up, but I already
Well,
know
you
you're
are.
voting
You're
no.
getting me fired up. First of all, I'm not very well versed on technology, so I'm trying to soak in everything here. But this kind of reminds me of Johnson Control, which we spent $8 million on, and we didn't have much to show for it. Albeit, I think we're going to get more value out of this than we did the $8 million from Johnson Control several years ago. But I will lobby the board that we need to do a better job of negotiating, and that we would turn this down tonight, or send it back to committee or whatever, because I'm not a big fan of consultant services, as all of you know from over the years of being around me. And I voted against the one the first time, I believe, when we started with these people. But what does bother me is that, did you say the city of Peoria has already implemented this program? So why is it that we're I'm 2 miles away from City Hall, or a mile away from City Hall? They've already had everything done for them, and we want a program that's similar to them. Why do we have to spend another $528,000 to have somebody tell us what to do? I mean,
Brian, is that rhetorical, or do you want Scott to answer that?
Why wouldn't you just say our counterparts down at the city, in our county, have already implemented this, and we'd like to have something similar to this. We want to put it out for a bid to get the best and fairest bid, and then we want to negotiate it. And why do we need to spend $528,000 for consultant services? I'm in the wrong business.
Are there other questions?
I'm sorry I talk so much.
It's okay. Ms. Kate? Ms. Pastisha?
I just wanted to say that as a consultant in my field, another word for consultant is expert. So I think that hiring an expert is an excellent way to do due diligence when you're going to plan to spend, millions of dollars on a system. So I appreciate that we hired an expert to lead us through this process.
Thank you. Mr. Renaud?
Just one quick comment. I agree. I believe that the front end, there's a lot of money to be put down, probably more than what we're accustomed to. But I also think there's a lot of front end lift with the vendor on this. There's a lot of costs involved to them at the very front, even though it's a system that's put in place at other governments. There's still a lot of customization that's being done on it to integrate with current systems that we have here. I also think that, as soon as, like Mark was saying, as soon as those servers goes live, they'll start migrating our data over. They'll be storing our data. So there's security there. So I do believe that there is justification for upfront money. That might be a little bit high, but I can see where that comes in at.
All right, so the motion on the floor from Mr. Fennell's committee is ready to be voted on. Please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum?
Aye.
14 ayes, 3 nays. Motion passes. Next is item number 5. A resolution from the chairman of County Operations Committee and the county administrator recommending approval of the lowest responsible bid of Tyler Technologies, Yarmouth ME, for an enterprise resource planning system comprised of software version implementation services, and training in an amount not to exceed $1,798,279.
Mr. Renault, Ms. Duncan, thank you. Mr. Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this 1.798 million is a part of the 2.1 that was just approved in the prior item. This is the actual RFP award for the software itself. As the clerk read, it is the recommended low vendor is Tyler Technologies. Their product is called Munis. We had a total of 7 vendors respond. 6 of them were evaluated. The 7th did not complete the required EEOC documentation, and therefore was eliminated before we even started to do the evaluation process. We went through a pretty exhaustive evaluation process to arrive at Tyler. The Executive Steering Committee, which we set up as a project governance model for this project, did an initial scoring and narrowed those 6 vendors down to 2. We then asked those 2 vendors to do software demonstrations, and those were done via Microsoft Teams. Each vendor was given roughly 2.5 days and did over 30 demonstrations within that 2.5 day period to demonstrate the various components of their software. We had over 35 team members from across the organization that somehow use Pendimation or Timeforce on a regular basis today participate in those vendor demonstrations, and then to score the software based on those vendor demonstrations. The Executive Steering Committee also scored the software based on the demonstrations we saw, and we did that absent of any knowledge or information of what the team members did. We also did that absent the knowledge of price, so that we'd be looking at the best solution for the organization. We compared in the Executive Steering Committee, we compared our scoring with those of the rest of the team and found that they were very similar, near unanimous, and arrived at Tyler as the best solution for the 3,000 plus requirements that we articulated in the RFP. From there, we've had multiple meetings and discussions with Tyler and our project management consultant, Barry Dunn, to refine their scope of services and to get the pricing to where it is right now. Obviously, based on the discussion that we heard in the previous agenda item, we'll continue to have those discussions with Barry Dunn at our side and talking to Tyler about just how we can better manage the cost of the hosting fees. With that, Mr. Chairman, myself or Mark are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Open for discussion. Mr. Ricker.
In the material here, we have that this is a 10-year agreement with Tyler for this Munis version of software. I guess, what assurance do we have past year 10 that this software will be current, be supported? Kind of back to our original comment about the Pendimation spending money and then all of a sudden saying, yep, it's over, too bad, so sad. How do we have some assurance for our taxpayers that at year 10 we're not left looking for another vendor or another solution?
I think if you look at an organization that we have picked, which is what I would say leading in the Tier 2 scope of ERP systems and has over 2,000 clients plus across the country. We've made a solid choice. I think those are issues that once we get down to looking at the contract, that we would involve the state's attorneys in to make sure that. I do know that as part of this, any upgrades, patches with Tyler and with our other Tyler projects are all included. There's no additionals. That's part of the process. And we will be pushed to take those. For one example, Intergov went live 3 weeks ago, which is a Tyler product in planning and zoning. In about 6 or 8 weeks, our first upgrade's coming. We just went live. So those are continuous improvements on their side. And I don't know that I can give you an answer exactly on a guarantee today, but I think that's information that needs to be part of that contract process and involvement, which will be from the state's attorney's side.
Okay, again, I deal, good or bad, I deal with software in my day role, and I had experience of good companies like Tyler changing their platform or product because they were based on Microsoft or something else, and so I don't expect Tyler to go away, but maybe this product called Munis becomes non-current, and then they would say, we need to convert you to our newest, latest, greatest version of Internet Explorer or whatever it's called with a significant charge or cost. So I'd ask you to negotiate some maximum cost or some negotiated risk management on behalf of the taxpayers that in year 10, even if they discontinue Munis in year 10, 11, 12, they won't leave us to have to start from scratch again. So I don't know how you negotiate that, but I would ask to put that in negotiation.
Mr. Sorrell?
I was just merely nodding my head. Yes, we will put that into the negotiation.
You'll attempt that.
We'll make it part of the negotiation.
Other questions? So, Mr. Little, this $1.8 million is for the software itself?
That is the portion that goes to Tyler. That is for their implementation fee. That includes their consulting side, their implementation fee. We've also included as part of that quote, one of the things we really want to dive into is improvements in our business process consulting. There's business process consulting where they will take the information we've provided and dive in deeper into our current processes. We'll go through and match up where our future processes are to what the capabilities of the system are, and then we'll document all those. That's one thing I think that comes out of this as a positive. We will have full documentation and process flows of all our business practices from finance to HR to time and attendance, which we don't have today. It's a process, for example, as part of the criminal justice system that we spent the last 5 years doing. We have complete documentation of that system today on how our e-courts run, how our circuit clerk office runs. We've done all that ourselves. This is part of that, and I think there's value to that. There's also some hardware fees within there. We have to buy time clocks. We have to maintain those time clocks. Those are all within those costs. And then I think there's some travel, not a lot. I think there's $35,000 roughly of travel. Our expectations, most of this will be done remotely. We will have some of their folks on site, but over the last year, many companies have found you can implement large systems like this remotely and via with the technology we have. So the travel fees will be minimal. So yeah, that's the pieces to Tyler and all. That's all the software, all the options. It was a 30-some page document that we started with and narrowed that down to the key pieces that we felt as an organization. There's some options we added in there. We added the cashiering piece, which we need to look at to standardize cashiering. We will actually, the other options we added was the Socrata Open Finance piece, which we have today from a different third party. This will be built in to provide open finance public information out there on all our financial side. And the other piece we did is the Capital Projects Explorer, which will be a new piece of software, which we don't have today, to allow the taxpayers, the citizens, to be able to monitor all our capital projects externally and tie that in with GIS. So as we're spending money on roads, we can look at the budgets where those are at. As we're spending money on capital projects, that's all becomes public information also. So those are a couple of the options we added. So.
So on page 340 of the book, table 2 has a $398,000 project management dollars for project management delineated.
That is the Barry Dunn Consulting. The next item.
Okay. Not connected. So in the fee, this $1,000,007 and change, you're saying that's not all software licensing. Can you tell me how much is?
The licensing is actually part of the SaaS fee. That's that yearly fee that we pay that we've discussed, the ongoing maintenance and licensing and an upgrade protection piece. That's part of that. We actually split out the services, what we define as the services, which is their services to install project management and all their resources to get it in, to get the system put in place.
Are you paying for an application?
We're paying for the right to use an application.
Outside of the annual maintenance?
That's included with that.
So this number is specifically paying for what? That's what I'm trying to get at.
It's playing, the 1.7 million is a combination of, number one, the ability to, the project itself to implement, that's their implementation cost, that's their project management fees, and then it also is included in that is the 2 years of the maintenance and SaaS fees. We included 2 years because we really see this as, I see this as a 2-year project. Although it will be done in about a year, I see the full piece of it 2 years, so we included those 2 years in as part of the project.
Wasn't that in the previous resolution?
The spending authority was the previous resolution. Now this is how we're actually going to spend it now that we've been granted the authority to do so.
All right. So it includes the consultant too.
So the next item, item 6, is consulting fees for Barry Dunn, the project management consultant, and that's $398,880. The balance of the appropriation goes towards less contingencies goes towards Tyler for the items that Mark outlined.
So why are we doing this in separate resolutions so I understand it better?
The first one was we needed the spending authority to actually do it.
Right.
This one is it's an RFP, but essentially you're awarding a bid for the software as a service. And the third item is an amendment to our contract with the third-party project management consulting firm that you awarded a contract to last year.
Got it. Anyone else? All right. We'd be ready to vote. Please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum?
Aye.
15 ayes, 2 nays. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item number 6, a resolution from the Chairman of County Operations Committee and the County Administrator recommending approval of a contract with Barry Dunn McNeil and Parker, LLC, Portland, ME, for enterprise resource planning, implementation consulting services in the amount not to exceed $398,880.
Jim, is this from your committee? You want to put it on the floor? All right, second. Mr. Renaud? Questions or comments? Mr. Ricker?
Just for transparency, as Mr. Sorrell commented earlier, we approved about a year ago the first phase of this for the consulting. This is second phase. I just want to be clear, is this the second and final phase, or is this second phase with additional phases maybe pending?
We do not see or anticipate any additional phases. So once we're fully implemented and we're past go live and we're at project closeout with Tyler, we would expect to then end our relationship with Barry Dunn.
Good question. Good question. Thank you. Others? Want to guess if I have any? I don't. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum,
Aye.
Ms. Williams, and Mr. Ricker. 15 ayes, 2 nays. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item number 7, a resolution from the Chairman of County Operations Committee and the County Administrator recommending approval of the collective bargaining agreement between Peoria County and Luna Local 165 and IUOE Local 649 and Teamsters Local 627.
Thank you. Mr. Reneau, second, please. Ms. Daly. Gotcha. Sorry, Kate. Mr. Renaud? It's always helpful if the chairperson comments on an agreement.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is the agreement with the Teamsters out at the Highway Department. This was the unit that voluntarily gave or offered a 0% last year contract extension while we were in COVID. So this is the agreement that we came up with. Welcome. Any questions?
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Sorrell, just so we get it on the
Yeah, absolutely, Mr.
audience,
Chairman.
give us the breakdown.
Thanks to the negotiating team, which was Shauna, Angela, Amy, and her management team at the Highway Department. What's before you is a 4-year agreement with that will start June 1st of this year. Annual wage increases starting June 1st of this year and then every subsequent June 1st. 3.0% this year, 2.75% in June 1 of 22, 2.5% June 1 of 23, and 2.5% June 1 of 24. So spring of 25, we would expect to be negotiating this contract again. And it is within the parameters established by the committee.
Thank you. Can you describe which part of the county's operations this applies to?
This applies to the Highway Department. These are our maintainers, our laborers, and snowplow drivers, and the folks that fill the potholes and plow the snow and maintain the county highway network.
Thank you. Anyone have any comments? I think we probably should also thank the BAs from the represented units as well as our team. It is collective.
Absolutely.
I'm happy, Rob, you got another one done, so appreciate it. It's tough business sometimes, but no one ever called about it, which is always a good sign. I occasionally get calls about how we're behaving as the government, so thank you for being a good leader there. If there are no other comments, I will call the vote. Please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum,
Aye.
Ms. Daly. 17 ayes, 0 nays. Motion passes.
Excellent.
Next would be suspension of the rules.
Council?
You'll be voting to suspend the rules so that the proclamation that's next on the agenda can be voted on tonight, even though it didn't come through committee.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to approve? Thank you, Dr. Blair, and a second from Ms. Betty Duncan. Thank you. Any questions about why we do this? All right. Please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum?
Aye.
16 ayes, 1 nay. Motion passes. Item number 9, a proclamation extending the declaration of emergency due to COVID-19 in Peoria County, Illinois.
Can I get a motion? Thank you, Ms. Bastution. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any questions about this? I don't slaughter myself trying to explain it. Everybody get it? Okay, please vote.
Mr. Rosenbaum?
Aye.
15 ayes, 2 nays. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Miscellaneous and announcements.
You bet. We're going to start with Mr. Watkins. Mr. Salzer?
I want to make everybody aware that the young man who signed a no draft contract with the Green Bay Packers. So if you're a Green Bay Packer fan, Betty Duncan, her grandson, Mr. Upoff, who played at Washington High School, and then he did his college career at ISU. He is that particular individual.
I can't believe you passed on that, Junior. Mr. Sports, sure. Betty, we look forward to him starting in September, October. How's that? All right. Anyone else? Moving down the line, Mr. Elsesser.
Well, congratulations to the young man. I'm a big football fan, but I do wish he would have signed with the Bears. So.
Ms. Pastusha?
I just wanted to bring some awareness to this project. I got a letter in the mail. I don't know if everybody on the county board did or not. This is a group of kids who have formed this organization called Together We Play, and they are raising funds to build a playground in Tower Park that anyone can play on. So it's going to have a universal design, so it's accessible to children and adults of all abilities. So it's going to be accessible for individuals who have disabilities. So I think this is awesome, and I'd like to share this with everyone, and I'll have Scott email it if you would like to donate to this playground. It's more expensive than a normal playground because it has additional features. So I just wanted to bring awareness to this, and I'm just so impressed when kids do something like this. So it's great.
Super cool. You're talking about the park in the Heights, right?
It's going to be where Tower Park is right now. There's a small playground that's been there for a long time, and I believe it's going to replace that in that area, is my understanding.
Thank you. Does your document have a project goal, that they're a fundraising goal?
They are They are trying to raise $100,000, and so their organization is called Together We Play.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing it up. Ms. Duncan, any comments? In the front, Doctor, Mr. Ricker, back to Mr. Fennell.
Yeah, I would like to let everyone know in Chillicothe, if you're eagle watchers, they put a tower up with telescopes down at the riverfront park, and there's 2 nests really close to the park across the river on the island, so it's a good place to come and.
I saw some photographs of I want to call them carpenters, but they seem like they were log cabin type carpenters when that was under construction, and it's actually built with wooden pins and the old-fashioned way. It's fascinating. Mayor White, I think, initiated that effort. Yeah, sure. It's super neat. I missed the dedication, but that's mine. In the back row? Okay. Well, sure. Brandy's mother? Okay. I just talked to her this week about the Equity and Social Justice Committee, which we'll be talking about next time we meet. So, Bella, do you want to add anything about? You good? Do you have any comments under miscellaneous? Okay. Well, we really enjoyed having you tonight, and you did a super, super good job on the Pledge of Allegiance. And thank you for being here. We have no executive session, so we would be adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.